Hello, welcome to the boreal toad training. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be chatting about the history of the project, the need for it, and a little bit of background. And just a bit about our team. Joining us today, we have Kaylee Mullen, Conservation Supervisor at Hogle Zoo. I'm Mary Pendergast, Conservation Ecologist at Sageland Collaborative. And then Sarah Woodbury is our Communications Director at Sageland. And just a little bit about how we work at Sageland Collaborative. We're always working to support wildlife and habitat conservation. And often the mechanism to do that involves answering some basic ecological questions about where important habitats are located and how native species are using those habitats. So to answer those questions in a meaningful way that can support development of tools and strategies that our partners at the federal and state wildlife agencies need, we often end up collecting lots of data in the field. And to do this, we need to be sure that we're using robust scientific protocols and consistent methods, which is why it's often crucial to have an academic partnership as well. And last but not least, it's often vitally important that we engage community scientists like you to enable us to gather data across large geographic areas and collect those data sets in a timely manner so wildlife and habitat managers have the information they need to make those informed conservation planning decisions. And with that, I will kick it over to Kaylee to tell you about Utah Hogle Zoo and their involvement in the project.
Thank you, Mary. Hello, and again, thank you for joining us today. I'll talk a little about the zoo stake in this project. So here at Utah's Hogle Zoo, we really focus on kind of four main things, and that is our outstanding animal welfare, our education, our conservation, and then the recreation. We're a good place for families to come and recreate whilst learning about what they can do to help save wildlife. With the boreal toads, we have a dedicated boreal toad conservation center where we raise toads and we breed them and release them back onto the landscape. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the program that we're talking about today. A lot of the work we couldn't do without the community scientists that help us. And that is why you're all here today. We're trying to get you excited about coming to do some boreal toad surveys with Hogle Zoo and Sageland and the Division of Wildlife Resources this summer. This is our 10th year working with boreal toad conservation, and it's just getting better every year. So Sageland and the Utah's Hogle Zoo work very closely with the Department of Natural Resources in this programming. Both the DWR and Utah Geological Survey. So the Division of Wildlife Resources actually administers a grant called the Endangered Species Mitigation Fund, and that helps partners and staff within the DWR to help monitor species that may be declining, and it helps the state keep an eye on these species so they don't end up on the endangered species list. The boreal toad was up for listing at one point because they had seen dramatic declines across the state, but Utah State did such a good job at monitoring them and collecting information that the federal government decided it was in the best interest of the species to stay under the control of Utah State. And that is where the division has really been putting a lot of effort in this monitoring and data collection. And we've been really fortunate that they've trusted the zoo and Sageland Collaborative and all of our community scientists to help them gather that data. So we are surveying wetland health, as well as looking for toads, and all of that information is actually going back to UGS. So this program is just a data machine. We're getting information on species and habitat and wetlands, and it's all going back to the DNR so they can make these really informed decisions. So let's talk about the background of the project a little more. So let's focus on the amphibians here. So just a basic background, like what is an amphibian? So amphibian means dual life, as they spend part of their time in water and part of their time on land. There is no hard and fast rules with amphibians. You're always going to find a species or two that kind of defy the rules. but mostly they will be born and have a water stage and then metamorphose and live on land. They will, as such, have gills at least one part of their life cycle. They actually evolved 350 million years ago, which makes them the oldest vertebrate class alive today. Pretty cool. There are 3 orders of amphibians, so they kind of split into 3 separate groups. We have the chordata, which is your newts and salamanders, your caecilians. These are these limbless, kind of snake-looking creatures. Then we have the anura, that's our frogs and toads. So anuran actually means without tail, which is a characteristic of frogs and toads. Unfortunately, there is a global amphibian crisis right now. Amphibians are among the most highly threatened lineages out there. At least 50% of them are threatened with decline. So that is 3,000 species of amphibians. And there is just so little data known about them because they inhabit these really hard to reach wetlands. They're very small, they're hard to find, and they just don't have that charismatic kind of pizzazz that a lot of the mammals have. So they kind of are suffering from many things causing this decline. Some of those things include habitat destruction and fragmentation, so kind of the separating of different habitats that they need to complete their life cycle. Introduced species, so other species may be outcompeting them for food and shelter, or they may be directly predating on them. Overexploitation in both food chain and pet trade. Climate change, we're seeing differences in snow-driven watersheds, especially. Ponds might be drying up earlier. Kind of all the climate change things that you've heard about already. Pollution, amphibians have this very porous skin. They kind of soak up the environment around them. So when pollutants get in their waterways and in their environment, they're kind of the first ones to feel that. And then chytrid fungus. So there are many species of chytrid, but there's one particular species of this fungus that is found globally now, and it attacks amphibian skin. So every continent where amphibians are found, chytrid is also found now. So most species are being affected by this fungus that lives in their environment, and it affects their skin in such a way that it causes mass mortalities throughout populations. But why should we care? Tons of reasons, really. Amphibians are, first of all, super cool. They're so unique. They have all these specialized adaptations, but they are cultural symbols, and they have been throughout history, indicating wealth and fertility and good luck. Tadpoles, they really help keep water in a high quality state. They are, they kind of keep algae under control and stop different waterways getting choked with vegetation. They're a really essential part of the food chain. They're one of the few animals, like we spoke about, that are in both aquatic and terrestrial systems. So they kind of form this link between both terrestrial and aquatic systems in the food chain. They're really critical in human medicine and research. They are an environmental indicator. So like I said about their porous skin, once amphibians start declining in the environment, it's kind of a signal that something bad is happening and we need to take notice before we kind of have this cascading effect throughout the environment, affecting then birds, mammals, humans. And they're great pest control. They eat thousands of mosquito larvae and insects and kind of pests. So boreal toads, they are not exempt from any of these things. They're facing all these same challenges. So here in Utah, even more so, we have these several kind of isolated populations. And they're in these really hard to reach places. I'll talk a little more about toads in a minute, but they are a high elevation species. So they inhabit these really complex and hard to navigate wetland areas that are up high. So there are these data gaps in our knowledge about where they are, where they're breeding, how the populations are doing. But what we do know after probably 30 solid years of data research into them, most every population throughout Utah is seeing declines in numbers. And we do have chytrid fungus here. A lot of the sites where boreal toads live are coming back chytrid positive. So what is being done? I'm going to just go through a couple of things that we're doing with our partners. Firstly, we have an assurance colony. So Hogle Zoo, along with some of our partner zoos and the DWR, have got 100 toads. And we are breeding them and we're releasing them back onto the landscape. So every single summer since 2019, ourselves and our partners have been releasing tadpoles and baby toads or toadlets out onto the landscape. And we're focusing on one population right now. It is our southernmost population, the Ponsongon Plateau. And we are finding the toads released the next summer, so we know that they are surviving over winter. This is a really great sign. We are trying to raise education awareness by conducting outreach with just everyone we meet, really. I'll always be talking about toads. We have a dedicated education team, and they go to every single second grade class in Utah, and they teach about all the different habitats, but they'll bring boreal toads, tiger salamander, different wetland species to really connect children to these local habitats. We work with different media outlets to kind of get a bigger outreach. And then whilst we're out on survey, we often have people stop and ask us what we're doing, and it gives us a really nice connection. Sometimes we'll have toad in hand and it gets people really excited. And again, all of this is to fill in those data gaps. So we're looking at presence, breeding, movement, home range, and then the habitat in which these toads are residing in and how it's been changing over time. And then just habitat work. These toads need somewhere to live. We need to keep their habitat in good quality. So along with SageLand Collaborative, we're building these BDAs in these known toad habitats, just trying to keep these nice shallow pools that they like to live in kind of there and available to them. So that's what we're doing right now. And a lot of people now ask, well, what can I do? So just some really simple things. Educate yourself and let your friends know what you found out and what they can do to help prevent more amphibian declines. Leave no trace when you're out there. Look and enjoy amphibians, but don't touch them. Your sun creams and oils can really hurt their skin. Be an eco-friendly consumer, preserve habitat, support your local conservation groups, and of course, join our community science program.